Lurie break it down, 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 down. She break it down, 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 down. She got a message for the people, a brilliant mind and a clean soul. She's standing up to the evil and making sure that we all grow strong enough to break these chains we in that keep us in this painful condition. She give us truth and division. That's why we listen. She break it down, 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 down.
Yes. Welcome back. You are listening to Lurie Daniel Favors on Sirius XM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action, where she do indeed break it down, down, down. We got a lot to break down today. Shout out to all of you who have already joined the listserv, LurieDanielFavors.com. Shout out to all of you who have already liked and subscribed to this channel, but please continue to like the video so that we guide the algorithms. Those of you who have joined the listserv, this weekend, you are going to receive an email from me letting you know that the doors for the Lurie Daniel Favors online community are opening, and that community is called Sankofa Connections. Shout out to all of you who joined us on Tuesday, our Sankofa focus group members. Y'all are already in there. I see y'all poking around and getting your profile pages set up. Y'all making connections with each other and linking. For those of you who are already in the community, and this is a small subset of people, but for those of you who are already in the community, after today's show, we are going to do the breakdown room teaser, so you all will get a chance to have some in-depth conversation with me about what's happened on the show today. So I'm very much looking forward to that. If you would like to participate in the online community and you are part of the Pan-African community space, because this is an affinity group for us, it is a support group and an education space, then you need to go to my website, LurieDanielFavors.com, sign up, get on the list, and then this weekend, we'll see what magic happens. And Monday, it is the 5th anniversary of my show here. I'm super excited. But all of that being important is not necessarily what we're here to gather about today. So I want you all to remember the concept of the squirrel. You remember the squirrel, and the squirrel in news is this notion that there's something really big and important happening over to this side. But if I can distract you with fanciful information and gadgetry and foolery over here, you're going to miss the very important thing that happened. I would submit to you that a couple of things happened yesterday that were important, but they were squirrels. Number one, Donald Trump has decided that he's butthurt over the fact that people now calling him wholly racist. And they're calling him racist because he put out that video of Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, basically their faces on the heads of orangutans. And you know, people even in MAGA world was like, dude, that's really freaking racist. And so he was very butthurt about that. So he put out a video this week of him with all the pictures he has of all the blacks who, even though knowing Donald Trump was a wholly racist individual, and I'm just going to share just a quick clip of this so you all get a chance to see it who are watching on YouTube. Those of you who are listening on Urban View, I'll recite for you what's happening. But basically, he put out this video of him with all these black people, celebrities, and basically asking the question, I can't be a racist. I've got black friends. Now, this is a squirrel, but for the fact that the Republicans have done a really good job of muddying the waters, making it difficult for people to get access to history, access to information, access to books. And so if you don't have a solid understanding as to what racism is, you or your cousins, because I know y'all smart, sometimes our cousins are not as smart as we are. It's okay. We're all in the same family for reasons. Your cousins might not know this. And so it's important that even though it's a squirrel, we give just a few minutes of attention to this. Amina, I know you have the clip, and I'm going, if you can just play it underneath me, because I know the music is a bit loud. I want to recite for Urban View what's happening as you all get the chance to see. Donald Trump posted on his fake ass Truth Social how quickly people forget. So sad. And this is a picture of him in front of a whole bunch of praying black people, who pastors praying over this wicked, wicked man. But let's continue, and we'll play it from here so you all can get a chance to see what it looks like. You've got Donald Trump.
Fought to smash the chains of slavery.
I'm not saying Donald Trump is racist. That's for y'all to decide in the comment section. But saying, I'm not racist, I have black friends, sounds racist. Donald Trump shares multiple videos of himself with black people. How quickly people forget. So sad. No. This post is so sad.
Donald Trump with Diddy. Don't know how that helps. Donald Trump with Oprah. Donald Trump with Will Smith. Donald Trump with Al Sharpton. Donald Trump with, who was that? I can't forget I forgot who that was. A whole bunch of black people. Black women, black men, Michael Jackson, whole bunch of people, Mike Tyson, just lots of people who was taking pictures with Donald Trump, performers, models, musicians. It's all the blacks. And he basically says, I can't be racist. Look at all my black friends. Now, we'll stop it here because nobody needs to see this. It's trifle. Oh, there's Snoop. Of course. Jesse Jackson, lots of black people were taking pictures with this man. Y'all got to be careful who you take pictures with, because you knew he was trifling and fugazi. And the reason we knew Donald Trump was trifling and fugazi, and again, just spending a few moments on this because your cousins don't know the difference between actual racism and fake racism. And racism has a definition, and we got to know the definition, because right now we are in a battle for analysis, a battle for the mind. And racism could either be a belief that one race is superior than the other, and y'all, I go way more in depth than this on the podcast. I ain't got time today because we got a lot of other things to get to. Racism can also show up in behavior or attitudes that reflect and foster the idea that there is one race that is superior over the others, or that there is a racial hierarchy. Racism can also speak to the systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another group. I'm literally reading off of Merriam-Webster, y'all. This ain't even that hard. Racism is also a political or social system founded on racism and designed to execute its principles. So when we think about the fact that Donald Trump is a whole ass racist and has been so for a very long time, it's important that we recognize that it's not about your proximity to black people, whether or not you're a racist. Lots of racists have black friends. Some racists have black children. Many of them. Look at Thomas Jefferson. He was very proximate to black people, raping black girls from the time they was 13 and 14 years old and having black children who he then kept enslaved. Proximity to black people has never been enough to eradicate your racism. And I don't have time to get into this today, but in the podcast, I go through an entire list of all the things Donald Trump, not even all, because we only got to the early 2000s. And I was like, this is too much time. We got to move on to other topics. But there is plenty of documentation as to the racist acts that Donald Trump has engaged in, despite the fact that he does surround himself with black people, because who doesn't want to surround himself with black people? But you all can hear that in the podcast. Today, I want to really remind you all that while that was a squirrel, it was not the biggest squirrel. Not by a long shot. The biggest squirrel yesterday was Pamela Bondi, the Attorney General for these United States, in her very contemptuous and contentious hearing that she engaged in yesterday with members of Congress who are trying to hold hearings on what the heck is happening with the Epstein files. There are survivors, thousands of survivors who have yet to seek justice. And so it was very attention grabbing. Very attention grabbing. But I just want to remind you, before we raise some of these clips, and we're not going to even share all of them here. Again, you'll have to go to the podcast for that. And the podcast will be out later on today. And the podcast is called Lurie Breaks It Down for those of you who are new to this space. But in the course of understanding what Pamela Bondi did yesterday when she was in front of Congress, having this very vigorous back and forth. And if she'd have been black, they would have said she was an angry black woman who was completely unkept and uncouth and was disrespectful. They would have all sorts of words for her. But she white. She's Pamela White. But I want you to be reminded about white narcissism. Remember white narcissism, this phrase that Ashley the Baroness introduced to all of us a couple of weeks ago? And the 5 characteristics of narcissism from the Cleveland Clinic, and it's important that we're aware of this because this is how white narcissists act. Having a grandiose sense of self-importance where they exaggerate their achievements, expect to be recognized as superior, fantasize about limitless success, power, or brilliance, excessive need for admiration, constantly craving for attention and validation from others, senses of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment, and automatic compliance with their expectations. We saw a lot of that yesterday with Pam Bondi. A lack of empathy, an inability or unwillingness to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. You should have complied. I don't know who those girls, where were their parents? It's not our fault their parents weren't paying attention. A complete lack of empathy. Exploitative behavior, taking advantage of people to achieve their own ends. And it's important that we understand the traits of narcissism when we look at a Pam Bondi, because as somebody said in the Urban View Mornings chat today in the Nubia group, Pamela Bondi does for Donald Trump what Ghislaine Maxwell did for Jeffrey Epstein. Pamela Bondi is Donald Trump's Ghislaine Maxwell. I thought that was a phenomenal statement, and I'm so glad that they said it. And she's also somebody who embodies white entitled incompetency. And so I want you all to take a listen to this clip. This is her in conversation with Representative Gerald Nadler. And he's asking her, have you even investigated this? You investigating Don Lemon. You investigating Georgia Ford. You investigating the Letitia James and Lisa Cook and James Comey. But you ain't invested not nary one of these men who is listed in these files. I want you all to take a listen. And don't just listen to her words. I want you to hear the emotion that she's tapping into, the way, and for those of you who are watching this, I want you to look at her gesticulation. Look at how she's performing. This is white narcissism when it feels threatened, and we should all see it that way. Take a listen.
I really have just one question for you. How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
Basic question.
First, You showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer the
theatrics are
question the way I
ridiculous.
asked it.
Chairman Jordan, I'm not going to get in the gutter with these people, but I'm going to answer the question.
How many have you indicted?
Again, the time belongs to
Reclaiming my time.
The time belongs.
I think it's very interesting.
Reclaiming my time.
I think it's very interesting.
And you can
When
reclaim
he
your
talks
time.
about they
Reclaiming my time,
indicted,
Mr.
the
Chairman.
president said they indicted him twice.
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock and restore his time.
Okay, here we go with these
Committee will be in order.
theatrics.
The time belongs to the gentleman.
Okay, let's stop it there because it's a bunch more yelling. But he asked her, how many have you indicted? She instantly bursts into frustrated tone and anger. She calls it theatrics, and then she says, you want to talk about indictment? Let's talk about Donald J. Trump, who's been indicted. Complete obfuscation. Not answering the question. She's not investigating these people, and you guys can hear the full clip later on in the podcast. But it's not just that, and that's sort of the tenor and the way that she operated the entire conversation. Tom Massey, who is a Republican, one of the only Republicans who's been willing to stand up and fight for the survivors of the Jeffrey Epstein, he and she also went at it. I mean, she went at it with everybody on the Democratic side, but also went at it with Tom Massey. And I want you all to listen to this exchange. Same thing. White narcissism on display for the entire world to see. Just remember, this is all a squirrel. And think about how theatrical she's being right now. All the cameras were there. All the focus was there. All the mainstream media focused on it. Let's hear what this exchange looked like.
Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I'm reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't.
bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way
this
you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where the
I want to know at what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired.
She didn't answer the question.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
You
Chairman,
saw that, right?
We
can stop it there. We can stop it there. She has not answered a single question. She is theatrical. This is a performance. That's how we know this is a squirrel. And frankly, part of the way we also knew it was a squirrel was because of the information she brought with her to the hearing. Mentally Divine did a wonderful video takedown because what was also able to be seen in these conversations that she was having with Congress was the fact that she brought with her binders of information, not about the facts, but about the surveillance information that they had on the members of Congress who were investigating the Jeffrey Epstein debacle. And so listen, pay attention to what Mentally Divine says here, and then think about what he says at the end. If they're doing this to members of Congress with surveillance, again, this is a squirrel, then what does it mean about the surveillance that they have as against us? Let's take a listen to this conversation. Amina, hold on one second. I want to get this lined up as well as we can. All right, let's hear it now.
The United States Department of Justice is spying on members of Congress who are pressing for the release of the Epstein files. This photo was taken the moment Attorney General Pam Bondi opened her binder at her hearing today about the Epstein files cover-up. And in it, you can clearly see Democratic Representative Pramila Jayapal's exact search history from when she reviewed the Epstein files. Here's a closer look, but let's get even closer. Jayapal Pramila search history. It has the exact EFTA identification numbers that are listed on the bottom of the documents listed in the DOJ database. And it also has unredacted information summaries of those files. For example, thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty. Or, I love the torture video from Sulayam to Epstein. Or, the Epstein victim list. You have Democrats in Congress trying to push for the files to be released to get justice for the survivors. And the response for the Department of Justice isn't to provide transparency, isn't to answer questions. It's to surveil those members of Congress to see what documents they would access so they could prepare ahead of time for the questions that they thought were coming to be able to control the fucking narrative. And that, my friends, is called counterintelligence. intelligence. They're treating a congressional investigation into Epstein like they would treat a threat to national security. And there's only one fucking reason that they would treat a congressional investigation into a perverted pedophile who abused, molested, and raped children and then made millions prostituting those children to other billionaires as a national security threat. Because they're protecting Donald John Trump. And as long as they treat Epstein investigations like intelligence operations instead of demands for justice, every single person in those files will stay protected. And by the way, if they're surveilling members of Congress, what the fuck do you think they're doing to you?
That part. They are engaging in the same sorts of counterintelligence surveillance methodologies that they use in COINTELPRO, which was used to basically disrupt Black liberation movements and Black civil rights activists and organizing. And that matters because this is how the Department of Justice is now weaponizing its capacity. And consider the fact that when they talked about Lex Wexner, who was one of the founders of Victoria's Secrets, very successful businessman who has actually been named by a number of models who have already said that man violated them in a variety of ways, and I have not talked a whole lot about that because there wasn't anything that I could say in terms of corroboration, and there was too many rabbit holes to go down. But this man is all up in the Jeffrey Epstein files. And when you think about Victoria's Secrets, when you think about the guy who owned Nickelodeon and all the things that the people who, young children, child actors, child models, Abercrombie and Fitch, people who have come out and talked extensively about this sexual assault and violation they had as participants in this industry, all these people are in the files. These people are in the files. And so one of the things that was also happened yesterday that was really important, Jasmine Crockett, I'm only going to play this because I think you all should just see Jasmine Crockett in her glory. But one of the things that Jasmine Crockett basically was able to do was point out the fact that Pamela Bondi is spending a lot of time surveilling members of Congress, blocking their ability to thoroughly investigate what happened in the Jeffrey Epstein files because she has failed in so many other elements of her job. Take a listen to Jasmine Crockett. Do what only Jasmine Crockett can do. Texas, y'all got to show up in March. Y'all got to show up in March for this primary. Take a listen to what she says here, because this truly is how, as the brother says in the beginning of this video, how you clear a heifer. And I want you all to pay attention to this because it's good. Let's hear it.
This is how you smoke a heifer.
And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer right or wrong, raping children. Wrong. Right or wrong, killing random citizens. Definitely wrong. Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States. Definitely wrong. Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried. But typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughing stock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Ford. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ because you don't seem to be good at your job.
Live your life in public service so that Jasmine Crockett don't ever have to put her words on you. We should all strive for that. And I'm so grateful that I'm not an evil person, because as I said in the podcast, don't evil make a bitch ugly. Ooh, that woman has aged. The lines, the wrinkles, the devastation to her body. Kristi Noem looking emaciated. Evil will really uglify a motherfucker. Now, here's why all of this matters. Because really, when you think about what else happened yesterday, I don't know that any of this matters. And here's why. While all of these theatrics were happening, while Donald Trump is talking about, I'm not really a racist because I've got black friends, here I am with Oprah. And while we've got Pamela Bondi, all the cameras, all the theatrics holding and captivating America's attention. You want to know what else happened yesterday? The House passed the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act, that very same piece of legislation that we collectively were able to push back last year, they passed the SAVE Act in the Republican-controlled House. They passed the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. The vote was 218 to 213. Republicans voted for it unanimously. And Henry Cuellar, the Democrat out of Texas, who what's that woman's name? Nancy Pelosi, and I believe Hakeem Jeffries and many other corporate Democrats supported Henry Cuellar when he was being challenged by a young Latina sister named Jessica Cisneros. Henry Cuellar is pro-abortion ban. Henry Cuellar was facing charges of conspiracy, money laundering, and bribery. Had to get a pardon from Donald Trump just a few months ago, and there was actually suspicion that he was going to end up voting or running again for his seat as a Republican. He is still a Democrat, but he's like the Joe Manchin of the House. He's like the Kristen Sinema of the House. He is the Don Fetterman of the House. He is somebody who, quite frankly, had the support of Democrats, and he consistently is among the Democrats who, if they're going to be a bitch who going to vote for something they should not be voting for, Henry Cuellar is going to be among that crew. He's the one who gave them the 218th vote that was necessary for this legislation to pass. The SAVE Act is basically a piece of legislation that will disenfranchise the vast majority of American voters from being able to vote. Now, I take this one personally because in my real job, where I run a real law center and we do real voting rights work and real voter protection work, this one scares the shit out of me. And here's why. The SAVE Act basically would require all eligible Americans to provide proof of citizenship by presenting a passport or a birth certificate when they register to vote. That would be on top of whatever other voter ID laws that your state already has. This is a problem because more than half of American citizens, of 150 million of them, do not have a passport. Elderly Americans are one of the demographic groups that is going to really be devastated by this, and many other Americans do not also have a birth certificate that is available. Whether you were born in a hospital or you were born at home makes a difference. Depending on your age, you might not have gotten a birth certificate. If you were black or not white at the time of your birth, which feels weird to say, depending on the time or the year that you were born, you might not have been given a birth certificate because of the discrimination that you face. In practice, the SAVE Act would basically also destroy online voter registration in 42 states. It would make it impossible for you to register to vote by mail, and it would end our ability to do voter registration drives. That man said to his people, if you vote for me in 2024, you ain't never gonna have to vote again. And they could technically allow elections to happen, but if half of the American citizens cannot register to vote, it's going to be a problem. Let's talk about the impacted communities, because while everybody was talking about Pam Bondi and while everybody was looking at Donald Trump's video with him and Diddy, which was a really interesting choice to make, this was what was being threatened. Impacted communities include working class Americans. If you have a lower income reality, you are far less likely to have a passport, which means that you are not only going to have to go buy a passport, you're going to have to take work off of, which is probably an hourly wage job, to go to an office where you can secure your documents in order to apply to register to vote. If you are a woman and you are married, surveys show that 8 out of 10 married women have changed their last name, I being one of them. I have a passport, but I am one of the women who changed my last name from my maiden name only to my maiden name and my married name. And this, I love being a favors, but this is causing a lot of people to think about the fact maybe I can keep using my married name in public, but I might have to take some steps to revert to my maiden name because they are coming for married women. They're coming for all women, anybody with the uterus. Surveys show, going back to the notes, that 8 out of 10 married women have changed their surname, which means they don't have a birth certificate that matches their current legal name. So if I'm born Lurie Daniel, that is my maiden name. When I married and became Lurie Daniel Favors, my passport does not match up with my birth certificate, which only says Lurie Daniel. If I don't have that passport and my driver's license is in my married name, or anything that I would try to use to prove who I am is not in the same name on my birth certificate, I'm not going to be able to register to vote. Do you see why this is a problem? Members of the LGBTQ community, particularly those who are part of the trans community, they've gone through the process, many of them, of changing their legal names, and as a result can no longer use their birth certificates for proof of citizenship and eligibility. If you are a person of color, you're going to face even greater levels of discrimination, because when you try to access the ballot box, legislation like this is designed to intimidate immigrant communities. And if you have an immigrant community that uses a naming function that's different than what we use here, so maybe your name is Maria Rosa de Carrion, and Rosa Maria is your first name, Rosa or De Calion is your last name. In American numbering systems, they don't often make space for all of those other names. So if you have a name that does not comport with that, you are going to have a problem. If you live in a rural community, There are millions of people who rely on remote voter registration methods, online voter registration, mail-in voter registration, so that they can access the ballot. 60 million Americans live in rural communities that would face significant obstacles just getting to the offices where they could secure their right to vote, including if you live in states like Alaska, if you live in Hawaii, you could be forced to have to get on a plane to travel to the part of your community that actually holds the ballot box or the registration apparatus. In some instances, you will have to cross state lines because you might not have one anywhere within your state where you live. If you are a victim of a natural disaster, the SAVE Act is basically going to prevent victims of natural disasters. Let's say it's a hurricane. Let's say it's a wildfire. You're not going to be able to register to vote in cases if your passport or your original birth certificate was lost or damaged. If you're a naturalized citizen, you already facing discrimination, baby. You know it's going to get worse. If you're a member of the U.S. military, you're not going to be able to use your military ID to register to vote. So if you're on PCS or if you're deployed on orders, you're not going to be able to use any of that paperwork to support your right to vote. If you're a tribal citizen, you're not going to be able to register using your tribal ID. Many people, millions of people live in tribal communities where they don't have mailboxes. They don't have the same sort of address system that many of us who don't live on reservations actually have. So they don't have a home address that they're able to use. They would not be able to register. If you are trying to do voter registration, you can't do voter registration. And that is the point. So while Pamela Bondi was screeching and scratching and doing all of this gesticulating and arguing and going back and forth, this was happening in the House. This legislation has now passed into the Senate. So here's what I need y'all to do. In addition to sharing the clips of people taking down Pam Bondi and the kiki and the cuckoo and a ha ha ha, look at all that they did to her and look at what she tried to do and how foolish she looked. I need you to call your members of the Senate. You got 2 state senators. Mine are Chuck Schumer and Kristen Gillibrand. You need to call both of your senators, whether you think they are Democrats or whether you think they're Republicans or Democrats in name only or whatever. You need to let them know they cannot pass this legislation because Donald Trump could technically have elections. A lot of people are saying, I don't even know if we're going to have elections. Oh, no, they could have elections. That just means that half of the people who should be allowed to vote won't be allowed to vote. And so if you don't have your elected officials' contact information in your phone, and baby, why don't you? You've been listening to me for any length of time. Why you ain't got your elected officials' information in your phone? Why you don't have readily access to that? You got everybody else in your phone. Why you don't have the information to contact the people who make the decisions that determine your ability to access everything in terms of resources and support? Why you ain't got that in your phone? That was the first assignment I gave my audience here on Urban View. So I know Urban View got it in their phone because Urban View be ready. Urban View is ready for the moment. But we got to be clear. Even in states that have tried this before, and there are states that have tried this before. Kansas has tried this before. Arizona has tried this before. And what ended up happening was tens of thousands of people just simply could not get the documents. And I know a lot of people like to say, oh, well, if you got to get an ID to drive. They're not talking about a driver's license, Clem, and we're talking about the types of ID that is going to only be accessible in a lot of communities. Because what we saw happen in Alabama, the voter suppression that we saw in Texas, what would happen is they would close the offices that can issue the IDs in Black communities. They would close them in Latino communities. They would close them in indigenous communities. And the only way you can get access to this information is if you leave your Black neighborhood and drive to the white community, which obviously got some racial issues because you got a Black and white community for reasons. And then maybe if the office is open on Tuesdays from 1 to 3 in the afternoon, you'll be able to get your information. But it takes multiple steps. Pulling together the documents you need for your passport, it's a challenge. If you don't have a birth certificate, it takes time. They're also including the capacity to purge voter rolls every 30 days. So if your election is 35 days out, you might be on the roll today, but 5 days beforehand, if they purge it, they're no longer having the quiet period, which would allow people who know that they're registered in the weeks immediately before an election to be able to stand. So while Pamela Bondi was doing whatever the hell that was, this was passing in the House. Get on your phone, call your senators, and you should actually use the 5 Calls app because the 5 Calls, it's literally called 5 Calls. You can find it 5 Calls. But literally the 5 Calls app will give you information about the legislation. It will give you a script to use when you talk to them, whether you're leaving a voicemail or if you're actually talking to someone in their office. It will connect you directly through your phone to their office, and someone will pick up the other line and you will have everything that you need right there to talk about it. This cannot pass, or it can. If we decide to be so distracted by Donald Trump's video of himself dancing with Diddy and everybody else, everything else that was in those videos, and if we're so distracted by Pamela Bondi's theatrics, which accomplished not a whole lot, but did expose the fact that Donald Trump, as has been said before, is basically His administration is engaged in a wholesale cover-up of an international sex pedophile ring. And MAGA, y'all said the government was run by a cabal of people who were sex traffickers, and we thought y'all was crazy. Turns out y'all was right about that. Also turns out the call was coming from inside your house. Because one thing the Democrats have been clear about, they don't care if Democrats get named. Democrats are really good at tossing out their own. That's one thing a Democrat is going to be very good at. They will eat their own alive because, baby, what they going to do is bicker and fight and have principles. They got principles sometimes, unless the principles are about confronting white nationalism. And so we have to act. All of this was happening in the background while so many of us were focused on, and I'm not saying you can't focus on them things, but we got to be able to walk and chew gum. We got to be able to do the work of not just paying attention to the fugazi, but also showing up powerfully so that we protect what's left of our rights and privileges, because they don't have to get rid of, they don't have to repeal the Voting Rights Act. They could just pass this. They don't have to repeal anything. They could just pass this legislation and almost instantaneously disenfranchise over half the American citizens in this country. So I just want you to be aware. We got to walk and chew gum. We're smart enough to do both. 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK is the number. YouTube, thank you so much for being with us today. Please like and subscribe and share the video and call your electeds. Email them. Drag them on social media. And here's the other thing. I don't care if you voted for them or not. I don't care if you are a blue Democrat, you bleed blue, you vote blue no matter who, and you're represented by a Republican. They are your representative. Don't not call them because they're in a different political party. That's not how this works. You pay them to work for you, whether they are hired by you willingly or you were stuck with them because not enough people on your side of the political line decided to vote. Take action, because they're really, really good at voter disenfranchisement. Really, really good. And if this makes it through the Senate with the ease that it made it through the House, and I say ease even though they only had one Democrat, that's all you need, right? Well, in the Senate, you need, I think, 7. But if they're able to do that, then what are we really doing? What are we really doing besides reliving out the end of the 1800s? And those of us who know history know that didn't end so well. We're going to hold it here. 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. Urban View, I will take your calls on the other side. YouTube, love y'all. Appreciate y'all. LurieDanielFavors.com. Get on the list, sir. We're going to have a lot of fun in Sankofa Connections. I cannot wait. Very